Are we on? Good evening, everyone. Welcome. If you've not taken your seat, please do so we can get started as quickly as possible. My name is Ken Beckman, and I'm the president of the Sienna Plantation Levee Improvement District Board of Directors. Whether you're sitting in the audience with us or live streaming us at home, thank you for joining us this evening. Before we start the program, I want to thank Fort Bend ISD and Ridgepoint High School for allowing us to utilize their facility. I'd also like to thank my other board members, TJ Jones here and Bucky Richardson, who I haven't seen yet, but I'm sure he's on his way. I'd also like to remind you all that we're all residents of Sienna Plantation, and we serve at the pleasure of the county judge and commissioner's court. Up front, I would like to address the primary concern of most residents, and that is, will the tax rate for the levee district go up as a result of the bond election? The answer to that is no, and this will be explained in more detail a little later. And just to be clear, the board is committed to making all of the improvements included in this plan regardless of the outcome of the election. We are actively pursuing alternative sources of funds for about $80 million of the $139 million through state and federal aid. Given the competitive nature of the applications, it's unlikely that all of it will be funded through these programs, but to the extent that we receive state or federal money, that would offset the project costs we have identified. A little over a year ago, we held an open house to discuss our plan of action for improving the levee and pump system. Fast forward to today, the district has made many improvements, including the creation of a Citizens Advisory Committee, the widening of channels 2 and 3, which will add about 219 acre-feet of detention, the purchase of portable, rapidly deployable pumps for the next hurricane season, which will provide an additional 80,000 gallons of pumping capacity, which is a 30% increase to the South Levee System's pump capacity right now. The expansion of the main channel in the South Levee System, which will add an additional 183 acre-feet of storage to the system. The design of a new pump station that will add 270,000 gallons per minute of pumping capacity in the South Levee System. This will be an increase of 100% to the system's capacity as it is today. There will also be expansion of storage and detention ponds, the addition of backup gate structures, a 180% increase in the capacity for the pump station, and the installation of real-time flood monitoring system. The purpose of tonight's meeting is to provide some perspective and educate and inform you about the district's bond election proposal and address questions you may have. We will do so in a 30-minute Q&A session with board members, residents, and subject matter experts who have helped us get to where we are today. We will then dismiss to the open house segment where you will be able to meet with these same folks and ask your individual questions. We only have an hour and a half to get through tonight's program and open house, so without further delay, let's get started. To provide additional information and answer questions, I'd like to welcome to the stage Adam Cohen with Robert W. Baird & Company, Hillary Thibodeau with Aptim, who is our third-party engineering firm who validated the recommendations put forth by our engineers, James Brown with LJA, the engineers for the district, Stuart Records, who is with the Citizens Advisory Committee, and then TJ, Tamika Jones, is on the board with me and is the board representative here tonight. Thank you all for joining us today. The first question I have is for TJ, and the question is, what are we voting on?
Well, good evening. Is it on? Okay, yes. Good evening. Thank you for coming tonight. I also want to mention that I'm actually the board member that got water in our house, so I have a vested interest in making sure that everyone understands what we're voting on tonight. And so the Sienna Plantation Levee Improvement District is asking all voters to consider the sale of $139 million in bonds over the next several years so that we can accelerate some of the projects to the levee and pump systems to make our community more resilient, as well as to reduce any potential flooding and other natural disasters in our district.
Thanks, TJ. Stuart, what is the role of the Citizens Advisory Committee?
Well, I think it was from a standpoint that after the storm that we wanted to have a community outreach to where we could have more impact on what was going on in the lid board, and that it was able to give us some more visibility in what was going on, and I think it's been a great thing for us.
Okay. How did the Citizens Advisory Committee determine that a bond election was needed?
Well, through several meetings, we met with the LID and met with the engineers and listened to recommendations and looked at all their different ideas, thoughts, cost, and looked at all the different options. And I think that it came to be very obvious that these improvements were needed.
Okay. James, what's the schedule for construction and completion of these projects? What projects will be the top priority, and how were these determined?
So hello everyone, I'm James Brown, the engineer for the district. I wanted to say if the bond election passes, we anticipate construction of all the projects within 5 to 7 years. If the bond election fails, the district anticipates it'll take anywhere from 15 to 20 years to complete the projects on a pay-as-you-go basis. As far as priority, we met with the Citizens Advisory Committee, the board, several occasions, numerous meetings. We have a list of 37 projects that are on the bonds, and we kind of prioritize those in the way of our first priority will obviously be flood fighting measures, anything that can fight flooding within the district. Those will be the top priority. Our secondary projects will be redundancy, and that will include sluice gates and backup gates on different structures, which we'll talk about in depth later on.
Okay. Hillary, from Aptum's perspective, what was the role of Aptum, the third-party engineering firm?
Hillary Thibodeau with Aptum. Aptum was hired by Sienna to perform an independent review of the existing levee and drainage systems and facilities in the southern portion of Sienna. The objective was to review and determine whether these facilities were originally designed to criteria and do they meet the current criteria. With the current proposed facilities, we also verified that they will meet and perform as benefits as expected. Ultimately, we were able to confirm that they met the drainage criteria to date and also the standards, and will provide your benefits as predicted.
Okay. Hillary, is this a common practice to have another engineering firm review existing facilities or proposed designs?
It is. It's a very common practice, also known as a peer review. The main purpose is to give a different perspective. Although the criteria is very strict, there are assumptions made by engineers throughout the process. So as peers, we do that review, verify, and make sure that the standard of care that is expected is met.
Okay, thank you. Adam, what does all this mean to the overall tax rate?
Okay, good evening. My name is Adam Cohen with Robert W. Baird. We're the financial advisors for the district. Once the committee and the Sienna Lid Board got to the $139 million number, the question was to us, they looked to us and said, how can we finance this, and how can we do that without raising the overall tax rate for the lid, which is currently 45 cents. So what we did was we looked at two scenarios, and I believe we have a graphic, if you could put that up. One option would be, the next one, sorry, that, perfect. So one option was to cash finance. The only issue with cash financing is looking at the overall budget. That would mean using only surplus funds in order to do those projects. $139 million in projects. Over the next year, it would be about $2 million, and then about $5 to $6 million a year until they could pay for all of those projects. The second would be looking at selling bonds, and with that, the district could support around $30 million a year, which significantly accelerates the program. So if you look at the overall table, the red line would actually be your overall tax rate in the lid, and you can see right around 2031, the tax rate would start decreasing, and then you see that green line that comes off of it. If you were to bond finance, over the next 5 years or so, you would pay for all $139 million in projects, and then that green line starts tailoring down, which would be your overall tax rate. And the idea is you have these facilities that have a long lifespan, 20, 30, sometimes longer in years, so you can actually finance it over multiple years rather than trying to finance it all at once. And what that does is the current resident at the time is paying for that infrastructure that was put in rather than you paying it up front.
You mentioned surplus funds, Adam. It just dawned on me that the last 3 years we've had a series of floods or high water events here that we ravaged our surplus funds account to the extent of a couple $1 million that we would have been able to apply to the pay-as-you-go process if we had not had those events happen. So, TJ, this question is for you. How can the homeowners monitor progress on the proposed improvements? How often can residents expect to receive transparent and up-to-date communications regarding these projects, and through what method of communications?
Well, first and foremost, our LID meetings are held once a month, and those meetings are open to the public. The public is encouraged to attend. We discuss progress of all projects, as well as other bookkeeping matters and the results of based on our financial advisor. Also, all the plans and specs and all projects, bidding, everything is covered in detail at those meetings. If you are not able to attend the meetings due to a scheduling conflict, all of the information is available on our website. We have been doing a better job of keeping that website up to date with as much information as possible. And I encourage everyone to visit that website at www.siennalid.org.
Thank you. I'd like to thank each of you for being here this evening. We appreciate your insight and time. And I'd like to thank you guys in the audience who joined us tonight. We hope that through this discussion you were able to obtain some responses to your questions. If you have additional questions, we invite you to join us for the open house portion of the meeting. There's not many people here, so you've got our undivided attention. We have some tables set up around the room where the different organizations are going to be, whether it's the Sienna Lid, Robert W. Baird, the engineers, whoever you might have a question for. If you cannot join us at the open house, please visit our website, as TJ just said, siennalid.org, or follow us on Twitter at siennalid. Remember, early voting starts October 22nd through November 2nd. Election day is Tuesday, November 6th. If you plan to stay for the open house, please get ready to ask your questions. We've got to vacate the property by 8:30 so the custodial staff can clean up. On behalf of the Sienna Levee Improvement District Board of Directors, thank you for coming. Have a good night, and please remember to vote, and go Astros. Look, this is pretty. If you guys have questions you'd like to ask from the audience, I think we're pretty comfortable if you guys want, as opposed to. Viewers, the gentleman asked about concreting the side of the Brazos River side of the levees, and asked if there's any plans to raise the levee. James, do you want to address that?
Okay. Am I on? Need to use that?
No, you're fine. Go ahead.
Okay. With respect to raising the levee, throughout the events, the levees were built in 1983, and through all the events we've had, as Ken mentioned earlier, we've had 4 river events in the last 3 years. The water never got much above the toe of the levee. So as far as raising the levees, that is not a priority at this time. I won't say that we don't rule it out in the future, but right now, the raising of the levee and overtopping of the levee has not been a concern through the last 4 events. What is a concern is erosion along the Brazos side. So there is a cost in the bond election to armor the Brazos side of the levee.
Thank you, James. Hillary, do you have a comment?
We just completed our report for the review as well, and we determined that your levee actually meets criteria in some areas, exceeds criteria. So,
okay, thank you. Anyone have a question? Yes, sir. Sorry, the gentleman in the gray.
Ken, so I think it'd be fair to characterize these list of projects in 2 distinct buckets, correct? One would be those projects designed to harden or improve the sustainability of the levee. And the other would be the more efficient evacuation of water behind the impoundment. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
All right. So you have talked about it. So I want to ask a couple questions. So you've talked about going out and looking at federal funds, FEMA, HUD, pick an alphabet soup agency. is it fair to say that you're probably going to get a better, you'll be more successful with respect to the levee projects and getting money for the levee projects versus worrying about pumps and evacuating water out from behind the impoundment? And you talked, like you've said, you've done some of that work. Can you give a little color on what success you've had in trying to determine whether funds are available? For example, I know that New Territory is going through an extensive process right now looking at their situation, which may be a little more dire than ours is right now. But they're also looking at funds, and their website gives a lot of information about that. Can you give some color around that? That's question one. And secondly, this river erosion project, can you talk a little bit about that, because that's not really been mentioned up to this point?
Sure. Yeah, Rich. Rich Muller is the attorney for the district, and he is more qualified to answer part of your question.
Yeah, we're actually the ones in charge of trying to go get as much money as we can from other people. So over the last 2 years, we've applied to FEMA for about $7 million in reimbursement for the 2016-2017 events. Getting money from FEMA is a slow process. We've gotten, I think, close to about $1 million so far, and we still have a bunch of claims pending. We've also gotten several $1 million from our insurance company. And then we recently hired a firm who specializes in these grant applications. That's really one of all the things they do. And they submitted notices of intent to FEMA and the state in the last 30 days, I think, asking for about $80 million of the $139 million. It's hard for me to guess what they're going to like and not like. I think it's unlikely we get all of the $80 million, but if we get even half of it, that would be a huge chunk.
Can you work together with the other districts, in other words, like the Sam's Club of levee districts, to put more pressure on the federal agency?
Yeah, all of that stuff is administered through the state, and really we're competing with those other districts for those funds. So I don't know that we can, if we band together, we might be working against ourselves. That's not to say that, I know for a fact the county judge is vigorously advocating for getting as much money to Fort Bend County as we can. How that gets divided up is a different equation. So I think that everybody's trying to turn over every rock and stone to get money from anywhere we can so that we can reduce the burden to the taxpayers. With respect to your second question, I think was with respect to the erosion along the Brazos River. Who wants to handle that? That's more of an engineering issue.
Are you talking about the oxbow?
Yeah.
There are two line items in the levee section. One was the hardening of the exterior, and the other what they call the erosion of the Brazos
Yeah.
River.
It's the oxbow?
Yes.
Yeah, we're actually already in preliminary engineering. I know that our operator, so it'd be easier with a map, but there's an oxbow of the Brazos River that kind of comes out and kind of encroaches towards our levee. That is continuing to erode towards our levee. If that is not stopped, someday it will take out the levee. So we're actually in preliminary feasibility studies of what we can do to armor that oxbow. We're not going to be able to take the oxbow and move it back into the Brazos, but what we possibly could do is look at things like crushed rock or deep sheet piling, something to stop that erosion, just like they did at the Grand Parkway in New Territory. Like you said, they came in, they did a concrete cutoff wall, and that has kept the bridge from falling into the river and prevented the erosion towards New Territory's levee. All those things are up for discussion and feasibility right now on that. The armoring of the levee, I think I covered that. That is nothing more than going out and taking the outside of the levee and putting a concrete slope paving all along from our southern pump station up to State Highway 6. And so as that water is moving along the levee, it's not eroding the levee over time.
Did you look at other alternatives like crushed aggregate or concrete pillows or something like that?
Really, the front runner on doing something like that is a concrete mat, an articulated block where you put it up at the top of the levee, you roll it down, grass can grow up through it, really armors the levee. That way you can see what's going on, you can see if voids are developing under that concrete mat, whereas slope concrete paving, you necessarily can't see the voids. So yes, we've looked at all kinds of alternatives.
Yes, sir. You had a question?
And you have to excuse me, I have voluntary brain tremors, makes me shake. But anyway, we've lived here since 2006. We'd never even had water in the street, and I know I was late getting here, but nobody's ever told me why my house flooded. You know, we were in a hole for $80,000, and I'm still paying lid taxes every year. There was no abatement or anything for saying, hey, you got hit, you had to borrow money to fix your house and stuff like that. And, you know, it's just kind of a sore subject. I mean, you know, we got taken out by a raft. The fire department came and pounded on the door and took us out because they said the levee was going to break. And the fireman that took us out, you know, once he got us to safety, said they were going to fill sandbags so they could reinforce the levee. But I mean, I still don't know why my house flooded. I mean, when I moved out there, they said, hey, you're high and dry. You don't have to worry about flood insurance. That area will never flood. I live in Waters Lake on Broken Air. But, yeah, we flooded. So, and, you know, we're like 98% finished, but, you know, it's taken a long, long time to get it fixed. So, is there anything for abatement for people like me, or is it just going to keep going on and pouring money into the lid? And I really don't feel like the lid did a good job for me because I know I got flooded, and there's some that got flooded worse than I did. So, but hey, I'm an old man, and my only concern is I got enough money to stay here as long as I can. And I'm paying a lot of taxes every year.
Yes, sir. There was an opportunity, I don't know if you took advantage of it, to get your property taxes abated.
They did do that.
Okay.
Property taxes, but it didn't do much for lid.
Well,
Lid doesn't give me anything because I'm an old man. I'm pushing 80, so, you know, my income is frozen. I'm not going to get any more. There's no way to offset the increases in anything.
well, the lid does recognize a homestead exemption for seniors, and then there was the opportunity for you to get part of your 2017 taxes
They
abated.
do that, but man, it still didn't go down that much. It sure did make a dent in 80,000.
Yes, sir. All I know is the levee never broke. I don't know what the fireman told you.
Well, no, they were afraid it was going to. That's,
Yes, sir.
They came at 12 to take us out, and we said no. They came at 5:30, and we said no. Well, at 8:30, they were pounding on the front and back door and said we had to go. So we left, and they took us out in a raft. The water was up to the door then, but you know, we were set to go upstairs. We thought we could ride it out, which, as it turned out, we could have. But you know, that didn't prevent the sheetrock damage and the carpet and all that stuff. So.
Yes, sir. Well, I'm sorry for your loss. The fact of the matter is we had more rain inside the levee than our pumping system was able to pump out in a timely manner. That's why your house flooded. There were no, everything performed the way it was supposed to. In fact, everything performed better than what it was engineered to perform. So we got more water out from inside the levee than we ever imagined possible, and the fact that we had one house flood still is a concern, and that's what we're trying to rectify by this bond election. We're hoping to move it to a point where this will never happen again to someone.
Is there any way to freeze the lid taxes like they freeze the school taxes for a senior citizen?
I don't know. We can certainly examine that and discuss it at our board meeting.
They keep going up every year, and that's what I say, you know.
Well, no, so the tax rate doesn't keep going up.
No, but my taxes do.
Well, that's your home value. That's
Well,
our tax rate hasn't gone up in 4 or 5 years.
My school taxes don't go up because they're frozen,
Okay.
but my lid and mud taxes do. So, you know, it's just a concern. When I moved here, I thought I had enough money. Now I'm worrying if I got enough money to last. So, especially with that $80,000, well, it's over $80,000, but we got $75,000 from SBA, and then we took some money out of IRAs to pay the rest of it. But I mean, you know, it's a big hit when you're.
Yes, sir. I'll be glad to bring it up at the next board meeting to talk about.
Well, I'm sorry I haven't been able to come to them. I've had some health issues, but.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else have any questions?
Might be a simple question, but
You said that more water fell than you were planning to have. And whatever the number of inches was, I don't really care. But with the improvements, how much more rain could we take before you have a problem?
James? Or
Me and Hillary can both probably tag team this. Sir, in short, there's no other answer for you other than the 100-year storm in Harris County and the surrounding 7 counties is 12.5 inches in 24 hours. 100-year is a 1% chance in any given year that you're going to get that 12.5 inches in a 24-hour period. I don't want to confuse it. It's 12.5 inches in a 24-hour period. In 4 days, we got 40 inches fall on this levee system. The pumps don't do anything. What pumps do is when the gates close and the Brazos River comes up on our levee, all the pumps do is they allow us to pump out all the water over time. What we had was storage and channels and pumps working as a system, and we got 40 inches inside the levee, and the criteria and a normal 100-year is 12.5. So in short, that's why we had the problems. I don't know if that answers your question, but I will say that if we do all the pumping systems and all the improvements on the bond that's up for the bond election, we would not have had water above 51.8 inside the levee, and that's the coincident event. I'm throwing some big terms out, but that's the 100-year water surface in the levee system, and everybody at a minimum would have had 1 foot below their slab if we have all these improvements that are on the bond election in place. And we get another Harvey-like event, 40 inches over 4 days. I don't know if Hillary wants to add to that.
No. As far as requirements, you are above what's required by the code or the standard of design. So you're going to be going with these new improvements way beyond any other lids in the area and be able to handle that extreme amount of event in a short period of time, which is a pretty large event, not expected by many. Hurricanes can and have the potential to drop a lot of rain. The criteria in looking at the river rising and rain falling at the same time, it becomes interpretive. You taking that out of the mix. You basically focusing, I want to be protected from an extreme event of this nature, and talking about 12.5 inches, that's a lot of rain in a short period of time. So you're not going to see nowhere near the flooding once the system comes online.
I think that the answer I was looking for, if the rainfall was 40 inches in 4 days, if we have that same event, do you expect anyone to flood at that point?
James Brown. So if we have 40 inches over 4 days, and it's a lot of engineering and it's a lot of hydrology, but if the water falls like it's supposed to, it starts out, it peaks and it falls, and our pumps kick on, we have the storage, we have all these improvements in place that are on the bond election, the water surface would not have gotten over 51.8 inside the levee. I want to point out, if you've got a concrete ring around your backyard and you get 40 inches falling in your backyard and the only way through is through your house, I can't design to that. And I can't design to those kinds of things. I can't design to wake action of vehicles running down streets and four-wheel drives.
Yeah.
But I can sit here and tell you as the engineer, if we build all these projects, all these pumps, all this storage, all these drainage channels, if we get another Harvey event, 40 inches over 4 days, we will not have water. All the water will be a foot below every slab in Sienna, a minimum of a foot below.
Okay, so that's I guess the first question. The second question is, if we go to 45 inches, I mean, how much rainfall are we got cushioned above Harvey?
40 inches. These projects on this bond election are designed to prevent another Harvey-type disaster. We've had the levee system in place since '83. This is the first time a house is flooded in the Sienna Plantation Lid from a rainfall event.
I understand that. So in short, then, that would prevent flooding for another identical Harvey, is what,
Yes.
what the target is. Okay.
Yes, if it occurs over the same duration in the same time period.
And if it's
days.
45 inches, new game plan.
Yeah.
Okay.
45 inches is a new game plan.
Okay.
Let me also point out that there's a 100-year criteria for a 4-day event. It's 16 inches. So 24 hours is 12. A 4-day is 16 inches. We had 40 inches over 4 days.
Yep.
Right.
All right, thank you, everybody. Just a minute, sir. Pardon? The gentleman was asking what was the elevation of the water during the event?
Can I answer that? The coincident event in the southern levee system got to 55, depending on where you were, 55.2 to 55.5. That was 3 feet above what it's designed to get to because of that enormous amount of rain. So 55.2, if you were below 55.2, your water was at your slab. And after the deal, if y'all want to go into some in-depth talk about that, what happens in a levee system, you get the rain and it all equals out to an elevation. It doesn't sit up here higher and down here lower. It all equals out. So it could be in the northwest corner and the southeast corner. It could all be at the same elevation. If you were under 55.2, you were in trouble.
I think what they're trying to get at is just kind of a very easily understandable. In Harvey, the water got to 55 feet. If we build everything that's in this bond package in the same event, right? Every event's different, but in the same event, the water would be roughly 3 feet lower than people saw it in Harvey.
That's exactly right. It would
Right.
be a
So
52.
Right.
That's exactly right.
So think about where you saw the water at the top in Harvey and then subtract 3 feet if
That's
everything
right.
gets built.
That's exactly right.
All right. I'd like to thank everyone for coming.
Now,
We're through the first 30 minutes of the program, which is going to be our open meeting and live streaming. We're not going anywhere. If anybody in the audience has another question, we'll be happy to address it. But I'd like to thank everyone for coming tonight, and for you at home, thank you for live streaming. And hopefully the Astros have scored. I haven't seen a score in a while. Thank you.